Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take a second because I'm pretty convinced that most members, I'd be willing to bet that most members haven't actually read many of the critical race theory books that are in our curriculum at our military academies and that are being used as a basis for a lot of the training. So I'm going to read a couple of quotes from some of those books. One is, all whites are racist because all whites benefit from systemic white privilege. Oh, okay. Let's go from the book that's currently today, and I will enter into the record, according to the superintendent, in the West Point curriculum.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That many critical race theorists and social scientists hold that racism is so pervasive, so systemic, and so deeply ingrained in American society that taking this perspective, no white member of society is innocent. None. First of all, I don't even know how you determine if everyone is white, but that's a separate conversation. But according to these theories, going to our 18-year-old cadets, military members, family members, I'll just do one more. I have a whole list because this one is also, according to white fragility, that a positive white identity is an impossible goal. White identity is inherently racist. White people don't exist outside the system of white supremacy, and therefore this author in particular strives to be, quote, less white so that this author can be less racially oppressive. So, Mr. Chairman, my amendment is very simple. This seeks it will not authorize funds for the teaching. It's very narrow, folks. We've talked a lot about history, about racism. History should be taught. Racism exists. This is talking about critical race theory and the divisiveness of one of thousands of quotes from these materials that I could read you that says the term CRT means a theory that individuals, by virtue of race, ethnicity, color, national origin, bear collective guilt and are inherently responsible for actions committed in the past by other individuals such as race, ethnicity, color, or national origin. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to enter into the record the op-ed from the Air Force Academy. These were those who say this just doesn't exist. Air Force Academy instructor that is still teaching, that's confirmed, that says she proudly teaches CRT, not DEI, not history, not that racism needs to be dealt with. Absolutely agree with all of those things. That CRT should be proudly taught at our military academy. Mr. Chairman, we need to get back to our fundamentals that I think that this committee can unify around and carve this cancer out from our teaching and our training. And I yield my time.
Chair now recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you. And this would be the other issue. This is the effort to separate CRT from DEI. And to be clear for Mr. Banks, we are advocates on our side for DEI. We believe that diversity, equity, inclusion matters. We are not advocates for CRT. The issue is whether or not it's something that is prevalent and important enough in society that young people being taught to join the military would benefit from hearing about it. And I would hope, I mean, you guys spend a lot of time talking about how pervasive CRT is in our society and pervasively wrong. And by the way, there are many aspects of that I agree with. I think there are many areas where that's being pushed in a way that is detrimental to our society. But you can't deny that it's a thing in America right now. So if you're growing up and you want to serve this country, being aware of what that thing is. And by the way, I have actually read what you just said and all that to get into the details, understand what's going on here. Okay? And it makes me much more informed so that I can talk about how, look, I support diversity, equity, inclusion. I think we have a racism problem in this country. I think we've had an even worse one in the past that impacts, as many have said here, where we're at now. You can't pretend that 400 years worth of this didn't have an impact on how society is perceived. So I'm aware of that. And I'm also aware of the theories that take it a heck of a lot further than that and don't agree with them. And I do not believe, and this is where the famous conversation between Secretary Austin and Chairman Milley was very misunderstood. We don't advocate for what you just said within the military. It is not the official doctrine of the United States military to advocate for a single thing that you just said. Now, is it possible that there are people within the military who do advocate for that? Certainly it's possible, and I think that makes the debate more interesting. But I stand by the statement that the United States military does not advocate for the theories that you just expounded. They do not, and I defy anyone to say otherwise. That is not what the United States military does. So putting forward an amendment that prevents us from discussing something that is a very important part of American society right now, I think undermines the way we are training our United States military. I think to not talk about it now is just as dumb as if we weren't talking about Marxism in the 1970s. It's something that our military needs to talk about. So I oppose this amendment for entirely different reasons than I oppose the ones that go after DEI, but it should be part of an academic discussion in America right now. So I oppose this amendment for those reasons, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. McLean, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just an observation, I wonder what the thoughts on the other side of the aisle would be if we changed the word white for black. I wonder if they'd have the same intensity. But with that, I yield the balance of my time to Mr. Waltz.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. And Mr. Chairman, just a couple more points. I know we belabored this, but to Ms. McLean's point, I have a biracial son. He's half Arab. I don't know. I think if you looked at him, you may label him as white. I'm not sure. I know Mr. Mills has a multiracial background. What we're trying to get away from and get back to are the fundamental tenets of the civil rights movement that actually CRT opposes, number one. And to the ranking member's point, and I think this is a critical point, we have a lot of blending between a teaching of history, which the ranking member is advocating for, what blends over into training and instruction. And when you are a young cadet, when you are a young 18, 19-year-old private, and you are being trained to do something or trained that you should think in a certain way, that is dangerously blending into indoctrination. And that's why the amendment is worded in the way that it does. And then finally, this point, because I think this gets lost as well, of yes, we teach communism, that doesn't make it communism. Yes, we teach CRT, I may not agree with it. There are things that we don't teach. We don't teach the fundamental underpinnings, and we certainly don't let it blend into the training of fascism or white supremacy or other things. And at the end of the day, my opposition to CRT is you cannot fight discrimination, which absolutely exists and should always be fought against, with more discrimination over the color of someone's skin and assumptions about their lived experience because of the color of their skin. We have to move away from it. I encourage my colleagues to support this, and I certainly support the notion that we are spending this time because of the time we spent over the last several years moving in the wrong direction. I yield my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Alabama.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Sewell,
Chair.
for 3 minutes.
I oppose this amendment. I sat and listened to the last few debates about this subject. You know, as a proud product of Alabama's Black Belt and the member of Congress that represents Alabama's Civil Rights District, Birmingham, Montgomery, my hometown of Selma, Alabama, I couldn't sit and listen anymore without at least stating the facts. And the facts are that while 40% of our military is people of color, 20% Black, I think that all Americans have to be seen and to be heard. And frankly, I think that this whole debate about CRT, the debate about DEI, is really about not being seen. You can say that we're all equal, but we know that 400 years of slavery and segregation makes us unequal. But in the eyes of in our own eyes, we need to be seen. It's not enough to say that you're race neutral. I am Black. My lived experiences are different. My lived experiences are different even among and within our own race. And I feel invalidated when I hear that we want to do away with DEI and CRT when it's taught in the military or training that's done in the military. I feel offended by it. And I want you to hear my offense. my offense is that I have a lived experience that I want you to know about because it's reflected in what I do and how I do it. And so it's not enough to just say that we're all equal, that we're all seen as equal. Well, we're not seen as equal. Now, it may not necessarily be intentional, but nevertheless, it is about preferences that people have, predilections that people have. And I think that as long as we are the United States of America, our Army should reflect the beautiful tapestry of diversity. That's how we win. We are a mighty force, but we are also a force that is truly diverse. And in that diversity, I think, lies our strength. And so I want to be heard when I say that diversity matters, inclusion matters, equity matters. And when we're trying to recruit the best and the brightest, we need to make sure that the right folks are on the field. And if you exclude women, Blacks, and others, we're not getting the best product. We're not having the best team on the field. And as a proud Alabamian who loves to win football games, roll Tide, I want to win.
Thank you, Ms. Sewell. The chair now recognizes Mr. Mills.
Well, I want to just comment on a few things because I think that a lot of this that we're discussing, we're in vehement agreement on. I truly love the fact that we have diversity. Our military, though, did not start its diversity programs and becoming diverse since this presidency. It's been a diverse force for many, many decades. But there's a difference between the identification and definition of equity and equality. See, equity, as it's been described, is about equal outcome for everyone, where the military is about ensuring meritocracy and it believes in equal opportunity. When we talk about inclusion, I can tell you that whether it was in my service in the 82nd Airborne Division, whether it was the part of JSOC for CJTF 20, we had a tremendous amount of inclusion because we were all serving one purpose and one goal and one nation. What we weren't serving was one party's agenda. My son, as my colleague, Congressman Waltz, had talked about, is both a Caucasian male descendant and also an Arab descendant. And I can tell you that I wouldn't want my son to be treated any differently just because of some of his ethnic backgrounds. I want him to be treated as an American. I want him to be given the opportunities to live out his life and to achieve what he wants through his own hard work and efforts and the equal opportunities that still exist because of this body that protects that. So while we're utilizing on my colleagues on the left DEI as a way of thinking to bring us together, we have to acknowledge the fact that the reports that we've requested, the findings that we see, which has nothing to do with any former president dividing our military or politicizing it, is because there is a moral deficit and that we need to be addressing these things. I strongly support Congressman Waltz's amendment here, and I hope that our colleagues, both on the left and who sit with me on the right, are able to work through an idea of how we can achieve our common goals to recognize commonalities instead of continuing to try and identify what separates us. With that, I yield back.
I'd like to thank Mr. Mills. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to repeat again the definition of equity. Equity is not about equal outcomes. Equity is about recognizing that two different people, for a wide variety of reasons, start in different starting blocks. Equity recognizes that one of those people may have more hurdles on the track. Equity means that you recognize those facts and you meet them where they are to give them what they need to succeed. So my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, frankly, nationally, because I keep hearing these same arguments in my own state where I started the year as a state legislator, who keep wanting to say equity is about equality of outcomes. It's not. It is recognizing that maybe we need to remove the barriers that keep people from having equal opportunities. That is what equity means. And I will keep repeating that definition for as long as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle keep distorting the definition of equity.